Let's talk about Albert King and B.B. King playing in box 2. That's an Albert King sound, but he would actually mix some major in there. This note right in the middle actually adds some major sound to your box 2 licks, and while he didn't often land on it directly, he would add that little bend in there to effectively play this note. Now, B.B. King, on the other hand, he would drop one note outside of box 2 on the major pentatonic scale. Then he would jump up here, bend it major, and down again. So, versus. Let's talk about bending like Albert King and Freddie King in box 2. Key of G. When you're first starting, those are the notes that you want to stick to. If you can't hit those accurately, it's going to be hard to make good sounding music if you try and get more complicated. The next step after that is to hit this note with that bend. After that, you can work on some of the more micro pitch bending stuff like that, where you're hitting little tiny in-between pitches, but you want to start with the basics and work your way up from that, learning to hear those pitches and hit them accurately. Let's talk about Albert King and something that you can do over the 5 chord to sound like him. Let's say we're in the key of G. Box 2 is where he normally lived. When you get to the 5 chord, find this place where you normally start your bends in box 2 and just slide it up 2 frets. Finish like that. Then find this place where you normally go to box 2. Play that right there, and then go back into your regular box 2 licks. And then you're back down to the 1 chord. So, simple to do. You're just sliding the box 2 shape up 2 frets to play over the 5 chord, and then back to regular. Let's talk about these ascending bend sequences that Albert King kind of pioneered and Stevie Ray Vaughan copied from him, and then we all copied from Stevie. You're going to start in box 2. I'm in the key of G. Push up a little bit. Go up to the next fret. Push a little bit further. Then go up 1 more fret. And so you're slowly going to bend, and then when you get to the final one, you're going to bend to the final pitch. And that is how you can build tension and then resolve it by hitting the pitch that everybody wants you to hit, but you're just taking your time getting there. Let's talk about bending in box 2 like Albert King and working with descending bends only. Good exercise to work on is to see if you can create the sound of a constantly descending lick, starting with a full step bend, letting it come down a little bit, then re-bending and going a little bit lower, then a little bit lower, and eventually you'll get so far down you'll have to switch to the next fret, push a little farther. Okay, I'm not suggesting this is something that you would necessarily use in a song, but it develops your habit of being able to creating that falling sound of bends kind of falling down the mountain. There are 3 things that drive me absolutely crazy when I hear somebody try and do an Albert King style, Stevie Ray Vaughan style bend, and they don't quite nail it. The first thing is not hitting the right pitch. That's not quite it. That's not even quite it. That's the correct pitch. Second thing, Albert strung his guitar upside down, so when he played, he was plucking the high E string up here with his thumb. So that's going to sound infinitely better. And the next thing is if you don't kill the bend and you let it come back down. You want that bend to die right at the very top. That's not to say that you never allow it to come back down. But do it intentionally as part of a larger plan, not because you've never learned how to kill a bend at the very top. Here's one of my favorite Albert King style bending sequences. In the key of A, standard tuning, slide up into box 2. We're going to start with descending bends on 10 and then 9. So push up, whole step back, then drop to 9. Let that come back down, and then do the same bends, but this time kill them at the top. And then drop to 8, and down to the root at 10 on the B string. So let's start with that. But we're not quite done. We're going to jump back up to 8. Do a little half step bend there. Go up to 9 and bend from there. Half step, and then straight down to 10 on the B string again. So you put that all together. Now, you'll notice I'm plucking with my middle finger instead of picking. That's to mimic the way Albert had his guitar strung upside down, so he'd be plucking these bends with his thumb, and it gives you a nice, meaty sound. Two things that made Albert King's playing great: his sense of melody in his playing, but also his timing. Take this lick in G, for example. The melody is just, but how he gets to those notes and the timing that he uses is what makes it kind of his signature feel. So we're going to be in box 2 here. We're going to bend from here up to a whole step. Now it's important that you don't let that bend come back down. Okay, we want to kill that bend at the top with palm muting. Kill it there. Take your finger off the fretboard. Drop straight down here. Then move up a half step and do a half step bend up to this note. And then straight down to the root right here. So that simple melody doesn't sound like much when you play the notes straight, but when you bend to them the way that he did, you know you're listening to somebody who studied Albert King. Now, if you're serious about Albert King's style, I have a bunch of free lessons on his style of playing that you can find over at TexasBluesAlley.com, whether it's the 1 Minute Blues or the Free Lesson Friday. And if you're ready to take the next step, I have 2 great soloing courses about his style as well. When you think about Albert King, you think about big, wide bends. And if you're talking about ending and progression over the 5 chord, that's kind of his standard ending in box 2. But there's another one that comes in handy, okay, where instead of landing here, he goes, whether you slide it or finger all the notes. So again, the first one, has a very distinct sound, but this one as well. Okay, so when you're playing the blues, when you get to the end of the progression, this note or that note are the ones that you want to focus on ending your licks on. Now, if you like Albert King and you love slow blues, you're going to want to check out my course, Albert's Influence Slow Blues, 2nd edition. There's a great rhythm lesson in there. This is a lot of kind of the groundwork that Stevie Ray Vaughan's style was built on. So there's an extended length solo that's taught note for note with tablature, but it's not a Stevie Ray Vaughan soloing lesson, even though it kind of sounds like it, and that's because Albert's style was kind of a stripped back, more basic version that then Stevie embellished more, but this is where the Stevie Ray Vaughan sound came from. So check out Albert's Influence, 2nd edition slow blues if you're interested in that. But if you're not, just check out 1minuteblues.com, and there's hundreds of other free lessons just like this one. If I taught you that the chords for Pride and Joy were that, you would probably say that's wrong. But then I would say, but that's how Albert King played it, and who are you to say that Albert King was wrong? Certainly not Stevie Ray Vaughan, because he didn't tell him that was wrong when they played it together in that studio session. They played it in the key of E. Albert King was using, I believe, a lower tuning. So what I'm showing you, you'll see him playing higher on the fretboard and backwards. But over the 1, if you find that as a 9th chord here, starting on the A string. He's just taking the top 3 notes of that chord. And he had a real kind of muted tone, so I'm going to roll my tone down. And then over the 4, he does it lower, but because he was tuned lower, it appeared higher on the fretboard. We have to go up here because that is where you would find the 4 chord as a ninth. Okay? So your 1 between 7 and 9, 4 between 12 and 14, and then your 5 over your, you can do that between 2 and 4, or 14 and 16. So it gave the song a little bit more of a jazzier feel because the 9th chord gives it a little bit more of a jazzy feel than 7th chords or dominant chord, what we're used to. Okay, so it gave the song a really interesting feel. But if you've ever wondered what that little sound in the background was, it was Albert doing those chords. So if you like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King, you're going to love Texas Blues Alley. I've got a ton of short free lessons just like this in the 1-minute blues section. You can look through them by artist, by song, by style. And then if you want more, you can go to the Free Lesson Friday section, longer lessons, sometimes up to 20 minutes. And some of them have free tabs that if you're on the email list, you can download the tabs. And then, of course, if you want to go deeper, if you're serious, that's where we have all the courses. And there are a ton of them on Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King. And if you join our membership, you get access to all of them for 1 monthly fee. So check out Texas Blues Alley if you like this lesson.